Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, October 19th, 2020, and 7 p.m. Tonight we have 3 public hearings that will be brief, but we want to make sure we give an opportunity for the public to ask any questions or make any comments about this legislation for which these hearings are being held. We will have one other committee of the whole to bring up an item that is coming forward in legislation tonight about a power easement for Ohio Power. And then we will have our regular session where we move through reports and ordinances. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is open up the first public hearing. We'll have each of these separately so that people can ask questions if they want to. The first public hearing is on our updating of the Athens City Code for the solar energy systems. And this came through the Planning and Development Committee back in September with Chris Fall chairing. And so Councilmember Fall, I wondered if you would have any just broad overview comments to make about this before we open it up.
Right. This is a recommendation that the city is going to adopt about solar energy systems, and the title, our planning and our planning code. And so it has to go through this public hearing. This will help us go from a bronze level for the SolSmart up to a platinum level. And that it will also help people be able to make easements and such concerning solar power and stuff, especially. So thank you.
Okay. And I'd like to see if council members or administration have any comments to make about this, and then see if the public has any comments. So council members or administration? Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley, and thank you, Member Fall. I just wanted to say that the Environment and Sustainability Commission is excited about these changes to our code, and we appreciate the work of Member Fall. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Clodfelter.
I also am very much in support of this, and I'd like to thank Member Fall for making it much easier for people in Athens to get solar arrays if they want to do so. This will be great, and it'll be wonderful to have a better level of in that solar situation. So thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you. It's mostly Paul Lowe.
Mayor Patterson.
Just a real quick clarification, Member Fall. Is it silver or is it platinum?
Is it silver? I was thinking it might have been silver as opposed to platinum. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's
bronze. But it increases us up another level, which is going towards our sustainability goals for our city. Thank you. Sam?
Thank you, Member Fall. I was just going to say that Mayor will take whatever we can get. If they want to give it platinum, we're ready.
Right.
But we'll take silver one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that if they gave us platinum, we'd be the first one in the nation to go platinum. So.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Maybe next time soon.
Okay, we'll open it up now for comments or questions from our attendees. I see that we have 23 attendees tonight. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment? Our government channel staff are working with us to help us identify anybody who might want to speak. Not seeing any raised hands or comments from, oh, there is one. Is Mr. Keister? Are you wanting to make a comment then about the solar energy system?
Yeah, I think this is a good step in the right direction. And I think it's wonderful to be putting in more solar panels. I'm the author of 2 books on climate change. And so I'm glad that ideally we should try to reach platinum as fast as possible. So thanks for this improvement.
Okay, and thank you for the comments, Mr. Keister. And we usually ask for people to identify also their address for us so that we have the information for our records. So could you provide that for us?
Yeah, am I back? Can you hear me? It's 4592 Bessemer Road, Nelsonville, Ohio, 45764.
Thanks so much. Okay. Any other comments from the public? All right, if not, we'll move on to the second hearing, and this is a public hearing for Siemens Cardinal Supermarket, and that's a local historic designation. And once again, we did hear this in the committee earlier, and the public hearing is one of our last required steps before we do the final approval of the ordinance with this designation. Once again, Councilmember Fall, a little bit of background information about this, please.
Yes, this is a designation that helps to qualify the piece of property and 10 acres for certain types of tax benefits and other local designation of development funds and stuff. So it's recommended by the city and the Historic Commission, and a lot of people have been working on it. This is it is historic. It has like really classic lines, but also one of the best things is it's neon, and neon has become very sparse in a lot of areas. So any questions? Thank you.
And the letter that was originally submitted for this from the Seaman family talks about this being an historic property that was opened in 1951, and at one time was the dominant grocery store in Athens. So that's wonderful too, to be supportive of the historic nature of this local business. Any other comments from other council members or administration? And any comments from our attendees tonight? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to the third hearing, and this is a public hearing for the Athens Downtown Historic District, a local historic designation. And Councilmember Fall, our local expert, thank you.
This actually, these things that come out, these whole historic designation recommendations and such, comes out of our committee, our historic commission. And so I really want to point out and say thank you. This is exactly what we want to see working between council and commissions, is to bubble this stuff. So this is a local designation of our historic uptown area. Making a local historic designation, you get to have certain types of tax advantages and such and programs, but it also gives more local control over some of the development that will go on there, which other levels of designation, historic designation, doesn't necessarily do. Thank you.
Okay. And any comments from council members or administration? Okay, and any comments from the public? Okay. Well, it is very important for us to see this moving forward for the planning for our city. So seeing no other comments, I think we will close this public hearing then for the historic district designation. And then you'll notice for reference, when we come to these particular ordinances, the solar code is ordinance for the solar energy systems is ordinance 104. The Siemens historic designation is Ordinance 105, and then the Athens Downtown Historic District designation is Ordinance 106. So you'll be seeing these shortly as we move through. Before we go to our regular meeting, though, we do now have a committee of the whole, and this was called up because in part we have legislation that is needing to move through to provide easement for our new EMS station going in for power for the American Electric Power Company. And since all of our ordinances come through committee first, thus the committee of the whole, the review for this was started by Robert Hetty and then picked up by Jessica Adine, our acting public works director, and also then reviewed by our code director, David Riggs. And they had been in contact with the people at the Ohio Power about this. And this would be it's approximately 60 feet of overhead conductors that would terminate at a new transformer pole location. And as I understand from the correspondence, Hoon Electric is now ready to to put this in. And so the reason for it coming forward to council tonight is that so we don't have delays in the project and the construction.
Right.
Any comments or questions from council members or administration? Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. Where does the easement start and where does it end?
I know it ends at the EMS location at Kenny Drive, and I know that it's 60 feet long. The map is attached to the ordinance.
For first reading.
Right.
It's kind of a little block that's out in the middle of the site from when you look at it.
And this is Ordinance 12620 that is being discussed tonight.
Okay.
So the map accompanying that is with that. And Mayor, by any chance, do you have the details on where it starts?
Here's the, can I share? I don't think I can share my, it's on the first readings, ordinances under the, on our drive. It is 80 feet. It's not really on any like road. It's going to be power, it's like the power line sort of thing. Do you see it, Jeff?
No,
Can you pull it up?
To jump from Zoom down to Outlook and back and forth is just
right.
unbelievable.
It's along the power line from Kenny Drive west.
Okay, I'll check it. I'll take it.
It appears that the easement is not right on Kenny Drive. It's actually on the backside of the properties that are along, that do have frontage on Kenny Drive. So it won't be right along Kenny Drive itself.
Right. So
President Nisley, it likely comes right in off of 56, but we can get that level of detail.
Okay, and we do have the map available on our drive, but I understand, Councilmember Reisner, it's difficult switching off screen to try and get the documents dragged up. Yeah.
I've got things working right now and I don't want to jinx it.
Okay, we're glad you're here. So glad you're here to ask the questions. If there are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into our regular business session, and the first item of business is to establish a quorum. Before we have the motion for disposition of minutes, I would appreciate a motion. We need to modify our agenda tonight. You will notice that we originally had on the published agenda an executive session before our adjournment, and the executive session has been canceled for tonight. So could I have a motion for modifying the agenda, please, to delete that? Councilmember Clodfelter made the motion. Councilmember Smedley seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Disposition of the minutes is for approving the minutes for our regular sessions of council held on September 21st and October 5th. If I could have a motion for their approval. So moved by Councilmember Fall and seconded by Councilmember Katsas. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the minutes have been approved. Next item of business is communications, and the first one being a liquor control. This is a transfer from John Pantangas to TSMB Carryouts, and this is for a location at 74 North Court Street. So this is just a transfer in title, and if we would want to make any response, they would be due to the Division of Liquor Control by October 26th. So I wanted to let you know we've received that. Second item of business, and I don't see that Councilmember Hecht is logged in yet, or excuse me, Auditor Hecht, former council member and now auditor. But to let you know, to let the public know that council members did receive a copy of the 2019 audit for the City of Athens from Perry and Associates, and glad to say that there was no management letter. So that means there were no significant problems that were that they felt need to be mentioned so that they could be corrected. So thank you very much, Auditor Hecht and all the staff. I know that it always takes a lot of time away to complete that. One other thing, we do have Halloween guidelines that are published on the city website, and this is a document that says, what are the regulations, where do they come from, what's the source of those regulations, and also then just some of the things to be on the alert for and ways to report things that you might see. And that is under our COVID-19 resources on the front page of the city website. And I think that's all the things that I have. Are there other communications from council members? Councilmember Fall.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to let the public know that over the last few months, the Chief of Police and I have made a frequently asked question handout that has like 20 questions that I collated with other people so that is on our website. It does actually, it will help to focus discussion that we can have in the future about some of the issues that we found in this frequently asked questions. And I think it will be great for the public because then they can really start formulating the information and such that they want. So thank you. I sent it all to all the council members and everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for your work on that, Councilmember Fall. We have other communications from other council members. Reports from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason.
A report.
Okay. Mayor Patterson.
I have a few items tonight, President Nisley, for City Council and for the viewing audience. First off, starting Wednesday at 8 a.m. Through Thursday, October 22nd, there will be a North Court Street closing from Rose Alley up to, I believe it's the Carpenter Street intersection. And this is for a water line installation that's going to be taking place. So it will be closed completely to through traffic. It will be open to local traffic for people coming in and not coming out because we have several people who live down there on the north block. But again, just to be a heads up. And then the brick replacement, that will be done at a later date. They will be putting down the crushed aggregate over the trenching they have to do, but the brick will be reinstalled, like I said, later on. The Richland Avenue Pedestrian Passageway, unfortunately, some of you may have noticed it was rather gray and wet this morning. That delayed the completion of laying down asphalt on the Richland Avenue Pedestrian Passageway. That has been pushed to tomorrow. Again, just bear in mind that weather permitting is typical. And then the striping will take place on Wednesday, if all goes as planned, to finally open up the roadway to through traffic. If you haven't been down there, I encourage you to take a look. I did a press conference down there last Wednesday to give the public a bird's eye view as to how it looks. The project really turned out well, I believe. So keep that in mind. Richland Avenue will, at sometime this week, weather permitting, be open to through traffic. Leaf pickup is still underway and will be through the beginning of December. This week, they will be in Area 2, which is by and large the north and northeast quadrant of the city and west. And then on October 29th through November 2nd, it'll be Area 3, which is the south side of the city. So make sure you're raking your leaves out to your curb or to on your property, but up to the road front. And our leaf truck will come by and remove those for you. President Nisley mentioned the website having the guidelines for the neighborhood trick-or-treating. I think it's always good practice to remind people that all the provisions that typically take place on Halloween during the evening for the block party, i.e. stages, live music, vending, council closing down Court Street, none of that is taking place this year up on Court Street itself. However, worth reminding people that on October 31st, on Halloween, there will be the Honey for the Heart parade in place that'll be down at the West State Street Park, or the ball fields, where people can drive down between 1 and 3 p.m. on the 31st and experience the Honey for the Heart puppets on the sides of the street as you're driving through. So we encourage people to experience that. Honey for the Heart is one of those cherished events that typically takes place during the Halloween block party, but since there is no official block party at all this year, there will still be the Honey for the Heart at West State Street Park. So again, that'll be a drive-through where you drive through and loop back around at the end of the park and head back out again. So again, just encouraging people to experience that, but reminding that there is no street closing on Court Street, nor will there be bands, stages, vending, or anything like that up on Court Street itself this year due to the pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much. And we will now move on to ordinances for third reading. The first one being 10320. This has a long title to it, so I'll take just a moment. This is an ordinance authorizing the creation of the University Estates Incentive District within the City of Athens, declaring improvements to certain real property within such incentive district to be a public purpose, describing the public infrastructure improvements to be made to benefit or serve the real property within such incentive district, requiring annual service payments in lieu of taxes, creating a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of such service payments, and authorizing the execution of a tax increment financing agreement with the property owners in such incentive district, and is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 10320.
Can we get a second from Councilmember Grace?
Great, thank you. We've talked about this multiple times. It does have the longest title that I think I've seen so far. Descriptive title. This is a TIF program occurring up in the University Estates development area. For doing this TIF, the developer is also developing moderate income housing that meets with our affordable housing goals and objectives. And they will also be universal development, universal design in their development. So these sort of programs and such are right in line with our affordable housing program and plan that we made into policy a couple years ago from council. And that work is done by Sarah Grace, and she's been very helpful in this process. So thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and second for approval of this ordinance. Are there any comments or questions from council members? Okay, and we might note that this is the first time that we've used this tax incremental financing tool for a residential development. We have previously used it on East State, where there's monies that were set aside in that tax incremental funding we were then able to use for improvements on East State Street. And it seemed to work well. So I think this is an exciting thing for the city to be doing. Mayor Patterson, I noticed you had your hand up.
I would just like to say I'm so pleased that it has gotten this far. This has been a plan since 2017 when I learned about neighborhood redevelopment tips and had been working with then Service Safety, or then Director for Engineering and Public Works, Andy Stone, who is now, as you all know, the Service Safety Director, who is away. Anyway, this has been a long time coming. Give a lot of thank you to Law Director Eliason for looking this over, because this is not easy. This is a very complicated process, but a much needed one. Hopefully this will create a building block for us to use as we move forward in looking at the areas in the city that we know are ready to be developed. But a lot of times with a development project, if there's no city infrastructure in place at that point in time, it becomes extremely expensive, if not impossible, to develop new housing and to create new housing opportunities for citizens. So this is, I'm pleased that it has finally gotten to the third reading, and I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or questions from council members? If not, then I would ask if we have any comments or questions from our attendees tonight. Okay, and I'm checking the list here right now, and I don't see anybody's hands raised. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 10420 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 23 Zoning Code to include solar energy systems and is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 10420.
Second.
Thank you. I want to point out that this was a lot of shared work between Paul Logue, Sarah Conley-Ballou, and between the Sustainability Commission and the Planning Commission have both partnered and teamed up with this particular legislation. So it's definitely a team effort. It makes for a good model to go forward with a lot of our sustainability ideas and plans that we have identified in the various planning that we have done. So this will just make the city that much better about doing solar engineering on individual lots in the city. So I want to say thank you to everybody who's been working on this. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and second. Do we have any other comments or questions from city council members or staff? Okay. Any comments or questions from the public? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. And I think that one was seconded. I looked away just a second to write something down. I think it was seconded by Councilmember Crowell. Is that right? All right. Okay. Ordinance 10520 is an ordinance designating Siemens Grocery located at 305 West Union Street as a local historic designation. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 10620.
Second.
Oh, no, 10520.
105, seconded by
10520.
Councilmember Katsas. Okay.
Thank you. This is the piece of property that we talked about in the public hearing. This will help to do certain types of development going forward, and it is certainly important to, I think, the history of Athens. And I relish the idea that we have this neighborhood grocery store that's still serving the neighborhood after so many years. That's so rare. So, thank you.
We have a motion and second for approval of 10520. Do we have any comments or questions from other council members or staff, administration? Councilmember Katsas.
Yes, thank you. And I'm really excited that government can help in the preservation of these types of structures, because if there's not an opportunity to do that, we could lose a few more. And I think it's very important to do this. So I'm very excited about any of these that come forward.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Any other council members? Okay. Any comments or questions from the attendees who are online tonight? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 10620 is an ordinance designating the Athens Downtown Historic District as a local historic designation, and this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 10620.
Seconded by Councilmember Clodfelter.
Thank you. We also spoke about this during the public hearing. It's going along right with a lot of our uptown planning that we've been doing. The Special Improvement District is another process that we're helping with the uptown area to make it vibrant and sustainable. And this is one of those things, this and the other ordinance with the other designation of coming out of our Historic Preservation Commission. They are awesome people and they've worked really hard on this. And I just want to say thank you.
Okay. Any other? We have a motion and second for approval of 10620. Any comments or questions from council members or administration? Any comments or questions from the public? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 10920 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into or to extend the agreement with the Board of Athens County Commissioners for the purpose of obtaining the services of the Public Defender's Office through December 31st, 2021, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 010920.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you. This is our annual approval of the contract for the public defender. As we discussed in committee and at first reading, this is a bit of a challenge budgeting wise because the city and the county are on the calendar year and the state is on the fiscal year. And so we have to budget where we are really estimating the fee for the second half of the calendar year. So I want to say thanks to the city administration, including Patty Morse-Whitmer in particular, for looking into some of the research on this and looking at what we have budgeted in prior years. We are trying to be very careful with our budget, and we didn't want to over budget if we could help it. So we looked at taking an average of about the past 10 years of contracts to make sure that we are effectively budgeting for 2021. The amount that we came down to is $100,000. And this ordinance authorizes the mayor of spending that from the general fund for this contract. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any comment? We have a motion and second for approval of 10920. Any additional comments or questions from council members, administration, from the public attendees? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We'll now move on to ordinances for second reading. I will read the titles of these, and I don't believe we're suspending on any of these second readings tonight, so it'll be primarily just reading the title and seeing if there might be any additional comments. Ordinance 11120 is an ordinance accepting the plat of Harold Avenue Commercial Subdivision, introduced by Councilmember Fall. Any comments? Okay. Ordinance 11520 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 7, Traffic Code, Chapter 7.05, Parking Regulations, Section 7.05.13, Impounding of Vehicles, introduced by Councilmember Katsas. Councilmember Katsas, yes.
Yes. Thank you, President Isley. And from our discussion at committee, there was talk about having transit, some sort of public transit that would reach these lots. And I wanted to mention that through the I'm gonna miss it right now.
It's the Athens Transit.
program is.
Athens Transit
Thank
on
you.
demand. Yep.
Yeah, on demand. Yes, thank you. So that you have the ability where you can order up. That is now available to all public members, and you can order up a vehicle to take you to whatever location that you need to do. So that is an option that would supersede even a bus route.
Okay. Thank you for the additional information, Councilmember Katsas. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I'm not seeing any from the public attendees. Okay. All right. Ordinance 11720 is an ordinance establishing a complete streets policy for the city of Athens and is introduced by Councilmember Katsas. Any comments or questions?
There is a community member who would like to make a comment, as mentioned on chat.
Okay, yes, Rob Delac, yes. If you would let us know your address and if you have a comment or question, yes. Go ahead and join us at tops of 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. I think this is the first time that by the way, I'm Rob Delac. I live at 124 Morris Avenue in the city of Athens, Ohio. It's the first time I've made a comment on any council meeting since the pandemic started. So it's been weird for me to not be so engaged. But I wasn't here last week. I was on vacation in New York on my 25th wedding anniversary with my wife. And so didn't see the Complete Streets policy come up for first reading and don't know exactly what transpired last week. But what I want to comment is that I did a quick review of the policy as proposed and then looked at the policy that was tabled last April 2019, or the version that was at least submitted in April. And there's maybe one word that changed in the policy. So we tabled a policy because there were things missing from the policy, and now it's been brought back up with a minor grammar change a year and a half later. I guess I'd like to know what the story is, why the issues that were brought up last April, which were mostly about exceptions to policy and documenting those exceptions. And that's following the National Complete Streets Coalition's recommendations, 10 items that should be included in any Complete Streets policy. One of them is clear, accountable expectations, which if there's any exceptions made, they're done at a high level, and that is in the policy. That's good that the service safety director makes the exception. But then to document that exception, why it was made, and to make that information publicly available is what's missing from the policy altogether. So essentially, there's no accountability. If then the Public Works Department, the service safety director, never have to say why they made an exception, or even if they did make an exception to policy, then we're missing a major piece to this policy that's a critical piece. Then there's no accountability at all, and it maybe doesn't even make sense to have the policy. So can anybody answer my question about why the policy is essentially the same as it was a year and a half ago when it was tabled, and why the issues that were brought up that caused the tabling of the ordinance have not been addressed?
Okay. Thanks for the question, Rob. And I'm not sure that we have an answer for you tonight. It sounds like one of the issues then is that you're saying that there isn't in this language the documentation of if exceptions are made, the documentation for that. Is there anybody from the Transportation Committee? Do we have a comment at this point? Councilmember Katsas?
Yes. And so, Mr. Delac, did you watch the council committee where this was introduced? This was 3 weeks ago.
I was gone for 3 weeks, actually.
Okay, so you might want to back up, and that should be available. You should be able to rewatched that conversation. So the takeaway that I had from the last time we had this policy come forward was that council wanted to have some reporting, and so that is what has been added to the document since then. This was done through engagement with administration and staff to understand what would work between both entities, and I felt like I had reached a good compromise.
Can I respond? A compromise that changed the word "but" to the word "and." That's the only thing that changed in the ordinance, as far as I can see. So we just went back a year and a half and made no adjustments at all. We wasted a year and a half for nothing.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Dulac, I appreciate the comments and the question, and we do have the chair of the Transportation Committee who's been quite involved with it, and we do have 2 weeks between now and the final version of it, so there's time for further discussion rather than trying to go through the documents. And then that gives you an opportunity, as Councilmember Kotza suggests, to watch the video. So, yes, and Councilmember Kotza, do you have any other comments? And then we're going to move on to the next ordinance after that.
I just had one question, which I know is usually asked along with the address of the person that's speaking. But are you representing any groups on this?
No, not officially. Just myself right now.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the comments. We'll move on to Ordinance 11920, and this is an ordinance establishing guidelines for approval and installation of temporary sidewalk extensions called parklets for use by the general public at appropriate locations within the public's rights of way, and amending Athens City Code Title 11, Business Regulations, Chapter 11.06, Miscellaneous Business Regulations, Section 11.06.02, Exceptions. This is introduced by Councilmember Kotza. Yeah, I'm sorry. Did somebody say something? Okay. I'm not hearing anybody. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Okay, thank you. We're now going to move on to ordinances for first reading, several of which of these are going to be suspended tonight. Some of them related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and so time is of the essence on that. Also, the ordinance for our appropriations need to move forward quickly with those, and then also the Ohio Power, the easement on that one. So those are the ones that I'm aware of that we will be suspending tonight. Ordinance 12020 is an ordinance authorizing the Arts West Fiber Broadband Project number 334 and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. As we discussed, has been really working to find some really beneficial and at times creative ways that the city can apply the CARES Act funds to have a significant impact for our city. And this ordinance deals with one of those factors. So I would just like to read the ordinance. And this
Councilmember Grace, before you read through, if you can make a motion to suspend.
Oh, I apologize. I wasn't. Due to the time constraints of applying for and utilizing these funds, we would like to. I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules on this ordinance.
So we have a motion to suspend and a second from Councilmember Smedley. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, and thank you for that reminder. Okay, so this is an ordinance authorizing the Arts West Fiber Broadband Project, which is project number 334, and declaring an emergency. Whereas the Arts West facility has been closed due to the Ohio Department of Health guidelines imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas our community has expressed interest in continuing programming virtually at the facility, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to seek proposals and enter into contracts for the installation of fiber broadband from the city building to the Arts West facility, and to purchase equipment necessary to provide virtual programming that can then be streamed from the facility. Project number 334. Section 2, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $120,000 from CARES Act Fund 285 TC 500 for said project. Section 3, this ordinance shall be an emergency measure for the preservation of the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the City of Athens in order to meet the CARES Act guidelines, and it shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption.
Okay. So we have suspended the rules, and would you also make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we adopt this ordinance.
Okay. Seconded by Councilmember Smedley. And do we have any comments from other council members or administration? And do we have any comments or questions from the public? I'm checking the attendees list on the side to see. Okay. Mayor Patterson.
Just a comment, it's a reminder that, again, the funding for this is not coming from city income tax from our citizens. This is coming from the CARES Act relief fund that came down through the per capita allocation to, as well as the local government fund allocation to the City of Athens.
Okay, thanks.
President Nisley, I believe there was a comment in the chat from Alan Swank.
Oh, to doing the same to the community center. This is the question. Has any thought been given to doing the same to the community center? Mayor Patterson. Oh, Mayor Patterson, you're muted.
Of course I am. I can speak briefly to that. The current system in the government channel, which has challenges in particular with Zoom meetings, which I believe will come up in your next ordinance, that equipment will be, at this point in time, the plan is to migrate that TriCaster system to the community center and repurpose it down there for some programming at the community center as well.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right, so we have motion and second. And thank you, Councilmember Grace, for seeing the question in the chat.
There is another comment, but I am not sure if that is specific to this ordinance or just the public comment at the end of it.
Yeah, I think it's the public comment at the end from Beth Amariah. Yeah. Okay, so all in favor for approval of Ordinance 12020 signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 12120 is an ordinance authorizing a CARES Act expenditure necessary to update the government channel equipment for remote in-person broadcasting capability and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
And do we need a suspension on this as well?
We do.
So first of all, I would like to make a motion that we suspend the rules for Ordinance 12120 for the same reasons.
Seconded by Councilmember Clodfelter. Okay. And so we have a motion and second for suspending the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the rules have been suspended. Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And I would like to make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 12120.
And we have a second from Councilmember Fall. Okay. And go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that this ordinance is to allow for the expenditure of CARES Act funds. Again, the same source of funding as the previous ordinance. CARES Act funding for our government channel to acquire equipment for remote and in-person broadcasting capability for Athens City Council meetings, as well as other meetings. And Section 1 reads, Athens City Council hereby authorizes the expenditure of up to $36,761 from CARES Act Fund 285 TC 500 to upgrade equipment necessary to provide both remote and in-person participation for city meetings.
Okay. We have a motion and second for approval. Are there any comments from council members or administration? And any comments from the public? I'm checking the attendees list in the chat, and I'm not seeing any. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 12220 is an ordinance authorizing construction and construction engineering of the dewatering facilities of the wastewater treatment plant. This is project number 320, introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nisley. And our Public Works Department is ready to move forward on one of my favorite topics of discussion, dewatering. This is an ordinance to allow the city to move forward with engineering and engineering design of the dewatering, or construction engineering of the dewatering facilities at the wastewater treatment plant project. And we have, I'll read this. I think it's important for the public to understand some of how our projects are funded and the importance of these projects, both for environmental impact and just for keeping, doing the best that we can with our city resources. So, whereas the city is scheduled to receive a 30-year 0% interest loan from the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, and whereas the city is scheduled to receive a critical infrastructure grant from the State of Ohio Community Development Block Grant, which is the CDBG program, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio. Section 1, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to award bids to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder and enter into contracts for construction and construction engineering of wastewater treatment plant dewatering project 320. The 2020 Appropriation Ordinance 130-19 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $425,000 to CDBG Fund 248 TC 500, $75,000 to CDBG Revolving Loan Fund 249 TC 500, and $3,067,486 to Sewer Fund 750 TC 500, and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. Section 3, the Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $3,567,486 for said project as follows: $425,000 from the CDBG Fund 248 TC 500, $75,000 from CDBG Revolving Loan Fund 249 TC 500, and $3,067,486 from Sewer Fund 750 TC 500, from Sewer Fund 750 TC 500. Oh, I think that's a typo in there. So
I already thought that.
yeah. So we have some great work has been done for our city in order to procure the zero interest loan and the grant funding for this project that will provide some significant improvements to our ability to manage our waste. And so that is the ordinance for this evening.
Okay, thank you.
This doesn't require suspension, correct?
No, it doesn't. Not that we're aware of. Okay. Any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to Ordinance 12320, which does require suspension. This is an ordinance granting special emergency powers to the Service Safety Director due to the continuing spread of the COVID-19 pandemic and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Katsas.
President Nisley, thank you. I would like to suspend the rules for Ordinance 012320.
And we have a second from Councilmember Grace. And the reason being?
The reason is that at this point, there are dates that are coming up that we would like to have this additional power in administration's hands.
Okay. So we have a motion and second for suspending the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Katsas.
President Nisley, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to adopt 012320.
And we have a second from Councilmember Crowell.
Yes, thank you. And so this is a short-term measure. This will sunset on January 30th, 2021. This just gives additional tool that if there are gatherings that administration can act quicker to disperse anybody, and and the only reason that we're looking at this at this point is because of COVID. This is unprecedented time, and that calls for additional thought and process within our cities.
Okay, so we have a motion and second for approval. Any comments or questions from council members or administration? Councilmember Clodfelter.
I wonder if it would be beneficial for the public to just sort of say what this change would mean to the way things are handled.
So basically right now, the city council has the power, the ability to review every street closure. And so this basically gives administration the power to not have to come to us in order to enact a street closure. And so, when you talk about, we have some upcoming dates right now, and, I've never seen anything that has been as unstable as what we've currently have. So Mayor Patterson, you have some comments on this?
Just to add, Member Katsas, I think you've explained it well. I think most importantly is that this particular measure allows the Service Safety Director to close down the street to vehicular traffic, to where it's stopping the traffic flow in that other area, as well as to be able to manage said street or streets, singular or plural.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Spedley.
Thank you, President Nisley, and Member Katsas. So it occurred to me that this is, more for vehicular traffic. And I guess I'm curious, what instances do we think because of the COVID pandemic, vehicular traffic is an issue as opposed to pedestrian traffic or other types of situations where there are people congregating, or does this ordinance go beyond vehicular traffic?
It could go beyond in terms of the closure itself, but at this point in time, if something were to happen, an event arose, name something, and individuals decided to take over the street, that's an illegal act at this point in time, and it would require an awful lot of citation or arresting to take place. And therefore, this gives the Service Safety Director the authority to close the street to vehicular traffic.
Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley, and thank you, Mayor Patterson and Member Katsas. I do think it might be important to actually read Section 1 of this ordinance, since we are not going to be discussing this any further, and the public has a right to know when we are taking away council's authority and giving it into one individual in particular. So, Member Katsas, do you want to read that, or I have it open if you'd like me to?
No, I can. I can do that right now. And this is Section 1 of Ordinance 012320. The Service Safety Director is hereby granted special emergency authority due to the continuing spread of the COVID-19 pandemic to close to vehicular traffic certain roadways in the city as necessary to provide for the public safety and welfare of the city's residents. Said authority shall become effective upon adoption and will remain in effect through January 30th, 2021.
Thank you, Member Katsas. I appreciate that. I just wanted to point out that this is simply about closing roadways. So anyone who thinks that there's additional authority being given to the Service Safety Director, there is no additional authority. This simply allows the Service Safety Director to close certain roadways as necessary for the public safety and welfare. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments.
And I also add that this is not a pilot program. This is not something that we're going to look at in a long-term fashion. So this is not something where we're looking to move any type of power in any long-term fashion away from council to administration.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Okay, any other comments or questions? And seeing none in the public attendees requesting. All those in favor of approving Ordinance 12320 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We'll move on to Ordinance 12420. That's an ordinance amending the 2020 appropriation ordinance. And that's introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley. Although I have not received prior communication on suspending the rules for this ordinance, I believe we should, as it's an important ordinance in order to have our CARES Act funding ready to be used. So I make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
And then seconded by Councilmember Reisner. Okay. And we have a motion and second. So all those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the rules have been suspended. Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley. We have received a check from the CARES Act in the amount of $884,211.16. And the auditor's office and the city administration and city council recommends putting this amount into our CARES Act fund line, 285. And we would like to split this amount into the 500 transaction code and the 100-300 transaction code. So this ordinance actually calls for the 2020 appropriation ordinance 13019 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $442,105.58 to Coronavirus Relief Fund 285.120 transaction code 200-300 and $442,105.58 to Coronavirus Relief Fund 285-120, transaction code 500, and increasing the total appropriations by said amounts. Thank you, President Nisley.
And you're making a motion to approve that.
Making a motion to approve. Thank you. 01.
And second by Councilmember Fall. Okay, so we have a motion and second. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those and any, I will check in the chat and also in the panelist list, and I'm not seeing any persons wanting to comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 12520 is an ordinance granting a special right-of-way permit to John Hanson, the owner of 110 Morris Avenue, to allow a fence. Introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. This is a straightforward special right-of-way. It will be worth good for 7 years, then it will be able to be redone by the administration. It's for a fence, a 3-foot-high fence that will look nice because they have it up. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments or questions? I'm not seeing any in the attendees list or the chat box either. Okay. Ordinance 12620 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to execute a permanent easement and right-of-way agreement with the Ohio Power Company, AEP, for installation of overhead electrical service at 21 Kenny Drive and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I would request to suspend the rules for 12620.
And we have a second from Councilmember Grace.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 12620.
Oh, wait a minute. I've got to have you take the vote.
Oh, I know. I just barreled right through that, didn't I?
Yeah, somebody would have given us a signal if I'd forgotten. We have, I know the law director. So we have the motion and second for approval of this. And the reason being so that we won't delay the construction of the new emergency center off Kenny Drive. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the rules have been suspended. Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 12620.
And we have a second from Councilmember Clodfelter.
Thank you. We talked about this earlier in the evening. This is definitely a very much public use and a community value of this easement, and we should go forward with the EMS station. Thank you.
Okay, and I think we have a comment from Mayor Patterson.
I do, and I want to thank the law director for reaching out to the code director, David Riggs, who sent a text back with a question as to where this was located or how big this is. It's going from the northwest corner of the new EMS station building to the existing utility pole at the north property line. It's 20 feet wide by 80 feet long and will contain 2 new utility poles.
Okay, thank you both for getting that additional information. Yeah, the map on it's page 75 of 76 of our documents shows a rectangular area for the existing right-of-way, and then almost perpendicular to it, or at like a 45-degree angle, is the new right-of-way at the lower edge of that. So but you're right, not all the way to Kenny Drive. So yeah,
and because they're overhead lines too, so having it's not quite as important to have road easement on those sort of things.
Okay, so we have a motion and second for approval. Do we have any other comments or questions? Not seeing any amongst the attendees or the chat box either. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Those are our ordinances for the evening. We now have a moment for announcements and other business. We will be having committee meetings next Monday night. And so any committee chairs who know that their committee needs to meet, if you could let the clerk of council know by Wednesday, that will be help so we can get it on the agenda. Are there any other announcements? Okay. Seeing none, we have an opportunity at the end of our meeting for citizens to speak on legislative issues, and these are to be items that have not been on the agenda for our meeting tonight, so not been covered there. Each person is to identify their name and address, and also if they are affiliated with any group. As Councilmember Katsas mentioned earlier, I neglected to say that. You should note that. And when you start speaking, I have a timer and I set it for 3 minutes. And so you would have 3 minutes to speak. I know we have one person that has indicated they wanted to make a comment. We have 2 people. So we have Amariah first, and then we have it looks like Damon Crane who wants to make a comment also. Oh, and we'd have Chad Keister and Brendan Moran. So we have one, so we'll do in the order in which they were requested. So Amariah spoke to us first about speaking, and then the other persons can, Damon, and then Chad Keister, and then Brendan. So Beth, go ahead.
Thanks, President Nisley. My name is Beth Amariah. I live at 12 Hudson Avenue, Athens, Ohio, and I've been a member of this, a resident of the city for 8 years. As some of you may know, I am one of the founding members of Showing Up for Racial Justice, which has been an active chapter in Athens since October 2016. Tonight, I'm here simply representing myself and not representing that group. However, I do want to share that my commitment to anti-racism informs most of my actions and use of time. That doesn't mean I get it right. I don't. I make mistakes, look to others for redirection, and keep going. And I may even misspeak tonight. In spite of being really consumed with protecting the integrity of the election that is about to happen, and realizing that the timing of my recommendation is a bit late, I've decided to come before you regardless to share a deep alarm that I have. Unless you act in the next 2 weeks to give notice to the police union, the present contract will automatically get renewed for 3 years. That is a very long time, especially in the light of all the challenges that are being raised in so many cities about the function, the budgets, and the policies of the police. We are also in the midst of COVID-19, certainly one of the most unusual periods in my lifetime. And additionally, you as a body have seen fit to pass a resolution stating that you acknowledge the real existence, the very real existence of systemic, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized racism in this country that has, of course, not bypassed a small college town in Southeast Ohio. And you are committed to reviewing all of your policies and practices outlined in a well-written resolution, which I will not quote here. However, it appears that you are planning to just go ahead and sign a 3-year contract with the union. I understand that 3 years is kind of the usual practice, but these are not usual times. As I've said, there are strong commitments to change, and I'm asking that you give notice to the union that you are wanting to make a change in that contract, and that change would be specifically to offer only a 1-year contract. This would allow you time to thoroughly review the budget, policies, and practices that might impact that contract in the future. So at this time, I ask you to follow your own recommendations and make space for a careful and conscientious review that would include the police department and not tie yourselves to a 3-year contract, but rather negotiate a 1-year contract. I strongly suspect that once this presidential election is resolved, that surge participants would be interested in being a part of that process. Thank you very much for giving me this time.
And thank you for being right at 3 minutes. We appreciate it and appreciate you taking the time to wait tonight. Okay, next we have Damon Crane, who indicated he wanted to speak. And once again, your name and address for the audience members, and if you represent a particular group. And you can go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Damon Crane. I'm a member of Athens County Cop Watch, and I live on Hudson Avenue. As my neighbor Amariah discussed, there is a very important deadline coming up in less than 2 weeks regarding the city's police union contract. So with that in mind, I'll once more remind Council of the commitment to racial justice that each of you made in your June 22nd resolution. That resolution, which you passed unanimously, states, quote, Athens City Council is committed to a review of all portions of the Athens City Code with a racial equity lens, and conducting all human resources, vendor selection, and grant management activities with a racial justice lens, including reviewing all internal policies and practices, such as hiring, promotion, leadership appointments, and funding, end quote. It's now 4 months later, and it appears that no such review has been conducted. And now in less than 2 weeks, a very important deadline will come to pass. That deadline, as I said, is with regard to the Athens Police Department's union contract with the city. The current contract allows APD to destroy records of police misconduct after just 12 to 24 months. It requires the city to pay officers overtime for overtime shifts that officers decline to work. And it provides generous allowances for quote unquote uniforms and equipment, 3 times the allowances that OUPD officers receive, which end up being spent on running shoes and other personal purchases. Like many other police union contracts that recently have come under scrutiny across the country, the current contract here in Athens shields police from public accountability and causes excessive and wasteful public spending. And if you don't notify the police union of your intent to renegotiate by November 1st, the current contract will automatically renew and its terms will be set in stone for another 3 years. I've read the list of questions and answers compiled by Councilmember Fall. I think it's a fine enough starting point as any, but it's no substitute for the review you all committed to undertake in your June 22nd resolution, and it fails to address any findings of racism in local policing uncovered by investigations my organization has carried out and been publicizing for months now. So in light of the commitment you all made 4 months ago, I urge you to open the police union contract to renegotiation so that renegotiation can be informed by the review that each of you pledged to carry out. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Crane. Okay. And we have Chad Keister, who wanted to make a statement. And Chad, if you've given us your address previously, but just let us know if you are representing any particular group or just speaking on your own behalf, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Chad Keister, 4592 Bessemer Road, Nelsonville. And I am speaking on behalf of the Sacred Space Church, which I am minister of. And I do want a ban on no-knock warrants and a resolution demanding that. I've created a new sect of the Christian religion in order to punish those involved in the no-knock warrants and mainly prevent them. And at times, I've not left my property for years because of the gang stalking government terrorists constantly trying to break in. You can see William Black with socks on his hands at repealthepatriotact.org, robbing me of some of my best negatives from my 4 expeditions to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. You can see Ryan Kaywood, AEP employee at sacredspacechurch.net, breaking in past the no trespassing sign, assaulting me, breaking my collarbone, and instead of arresting him, the sheriff arrested me. And it's the subject of an upcoming book, and I'm appealing it to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the no-knock warrants, those involved, of course, police and also judges who issue them, they need charged with burglary, conspiracy, vandalism, mass murder for spreading COVID-19 and other things they do, theft, violation of civil liberties under color of law, invasion of privacy, criminal invasion of privacy, video surveillance crimes, and they also they just destroyed yesterday when I was walking in the forest a $600 computer. They bypassed, I had 3 alarm systems, 5 locks before you can get in, and the gang stalking government terrorists still cause mayhem. So I do demand that we have no-knock warrants everywhere, and we need to repeal the Patriot Act too. So do please get that done properly.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Keister. Okay, and I think we have Brendan Moran as the last person who wanted to make a comment. If you could provide us with your address, Mr. Moran, and if you are representing a group, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Brendan Moran. I live on West Side on West State Street. I would like to focus on APD's union contract that expires at the end of the year. The city must advise the police union of intent to renegotiate the contract by November 1st as per section 31.1 of the contract. We demand that the community gets input in the renegotiation process. So I'm going to get into a little bit more detail than Damon did. Let's jump right in. Section 14.1 B through D, which pertains to employee disciplinary records. Subsection B states that oral and written reprimands could be removed from employees' personnel file after 12 and 18 months respectively. Subsection C allows for suspensions to be removed after 24 months, as well as demotion cease to be considered in subsequent reprimands after the same time frame. Subsection D is the catch-all that prevents all reprimands from being considered in future disciplinary actions after any given reprimand's probationary period elapses. For a regular union job, this manner of handling disciplinary actions would be fine, but police are given special privileges, and therefore we demand that they are under special scrutiny. Now let's talk about section 16.7B, refusal, no response to overtime shifts. For those listening that are not familiar with this section, I'll read it verbatim. An employee who refuses or fails to respond to a scheduled overtime assignment shall be credited with the amount of overtime refused as if it had been worked. How do you explain this clause? Fun fact, from 2015 to 2020, APD has spent over $1.1 million on overtime. While we're on the topic of budgets, let's talk about section 24.1A, uniform allowances. Per these contracts, patrol and lieutenants are allotted $1,200 per year. Comms officers are allotted $1,100 per year for their uniforms. These officers use these allowances as a slush fund to buy whatever customizable gear, tactical clothes, or plain clothes that they want. What's worse is APD already provides these officers with standard equipment and replaces all equipment and uniforms damaged in the line of duty. What you might be asking yourself, is this a standard for local law enforcement? No. OUPD only allots each officer $325 per year for dry cleaning purposes. This single clause is in the contract is responsible for the majority of uniform expenses, which from 2015 to 2020 was nearly $250,000. I'd like to end my rant by on good terms, so let's discuss the section of the contract that I think is great. Section 29, substance abuse policy, specifically subsection 4, which strongly encourages the city to send officers to rehabilitation for substance abuse issues rather than pursuing disciplinary actions. This is great. Substance abuse is a medical issue and should be treated as such. My only suggestion is extend this liberal substance abuse policy to your constituents. The city agreed to this contract, therefore the city agrees that the substance abuse is a medical issue. So tell APD to stop throwing your constituents in cages for years on simple drug possession charges. To those that think that I'm exaggerating that the police would hold their own accountable, just look at the Andrew Spear incident in spring.
Your time's up, Mr. Moran. Thank you so much for making the comments. It looks like we have one other person. Is Mr. Suddes, were you wanting to ask a question or make a comment? Yes, Mr. Suddes, and if you could identify your address and if you're representing a group, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, I wasn't doing any such thing. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right.
Hit the wrong button. Story of my life.
That's fine. All right. I think that we have responded to the public members who wanted to speak. And we would now entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting. Councilmember Fall is motioning to adjourn, and a second from Councilmember Katsas. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying